Albert Breer did a mailbag, and somebody asked him about Trey Lance last week, and he said this: "He's not as skilled a runner as the Niners had hoped. He's a big, strong athlete. The question is really whether or not he can improve with a passer. If Lance, through his work with personal coaches, comes back a different quarterback in the spring and lights up OTAs, I think the Niners would be thrilled." Now, my take on this when this story came out, John, was kind of so what? We know Trey Lance is not a great runner. I've watched it. You and I, before the draft, broke down a bunch of his tape. He looked like a great runner. He has not looked like that runner in the NFL. That's been apparent really quickly. If his best skill is running, then it's a failed pick. So one way or the other, the Niners need to not run him 18 times a game. That is
but
not.
they've admitted now through him and through the grapevine, which obviously they would know this because we knew it, that his running is not some positive, right?
Yeah, that's 100%.
Because at worst case scenario,
it's like, it's not his best trait.
But what are his traits? If that, and this was the argument with him last year. If he's going to be an inaccurate quarterback and he can't run, like at least Fields, it was evident immediately, right? Like you drafted this dual threat, and even if you knew you were never getting Kyler, or even like what Fields, I mean, is a fucking elite runner too, or Lamar, you were hoping like a poor man's Josh Allen or something, and it was clear he just can't do it. He's not fast. He's not confident. And I would say that's a part of the reason taking the huge swing on 3 was the total package, the runner and the passer. Like part of what makes Josh Allen a really potent player is he's increased his accuracy, but wouldn't you say his running at any moment he can just turn into Cam Newton when all else fails? What's his name with the Eagles?
Jalen Hurts.
Just passing immensely, but at any moment can run. So what happens on first and goal or the 2-point play? What are you doing? Fucking give it to have Jalen run a quarterback power. Because
Jalen got hurt this year running.
But quarterbacks get hurt running, but Trey Lance was never going to turn into Phillip Rivers, right? He was always going to be a dual threat. Jalen's not going to. My point is, Jalen's not going to stop running. Maybe at the 17 times a game, might go down to 8, but running's going to be a part of his game in his 20s. It was a part of even Steve Young. Like as he got older, he was just a pocket quarterback, but athleticism is a huge part of the pitches he's going to throw. Because Russell Wilson, why is Russell Wilson potentially fucked? Because he's not a true pocket quarterback. He's got to at least scramble outside the pocket and just be the threat of running. Well, if he's not going to do that, he's never going to be Drew Brees. So it's why that guys like me that were bullish on Trey Lance started getting nervous once he kind of sucked at running. It's like, well, it's such a Hail Mary to ever be like an above average passer. If you just can be an average passer, but you're this dynamic runner, I can really function with you, especially when I got really good skill guys and a good coach.
I think it's possible that Trey improves as a runner, but it's going to take him playing a lot of football and getting more comfortable. I thought there were times where he tried to make more happen. And here's the hard part is there's just not a lot of evidence to evaluate him on, but he tried to make more happen. He felt like this is what I'm here to do. Kyle Shanahan is telling me this is what I'm good at because he's running me a bunch. So I need to make plays running the football. And I think when your coach is essentially telling you like, hey, this is what you're here to do. Like if your coach said your best skill is your deep throwing ability, you would force the ball downfield. By the way the Niners call plays, they're telling Trey your best skill is running. And so it felt to me like Trey Lance tried to make 8-yard runs out of 3-yard runs, wasn't sure if he should go down or try to take on a defender. He was really uncomfortable. And I think if he can find a way, whatever that way, if he can if he can develop as a thrower a little bit and just take some pressure off of himself, and then his runs become, option 1, option 2, option 3, nothing there. Now I'm going to pull it. Because running to me in those situations is now you're running with an advantage. You're running to the open space as opposed to running where the coach told you to run. And now I think it's more instinctual than it is, here's what Kyle Shanahan said he thinks is going to happen. This is what he called because of what he thinks the defense is going to do. Then I think we'd actually see Trey Lance develop as a runner. I don't think the way to develop him as a runner is to run him 18 times. I think the way to develop him as a runner is to throw. But as you said, it's obviously that's a chicken or the egg situation because
there's no development time anymore. It's like you can either play or you can't, like with this team.
But
it's a little James Wiseman Warriors.
He's
like
soon to be the only
fucking
healthy
rolling
quarterback.
or not.
He's
No,
soon
I
to be the
know, but
healthy holding quarterback.
in May and March and April, like who actually gives a shit? Come September, like there's no development. You're either getting it done or not. Like once you kind of get to this team moving forward, like we learned last year that was not going to be available. Might have been, but it wouldn't have lasted long if you would have struggled. There's going to be no. We'll have to see the quarterback depth chart healthy come week one, but there's no. It's like let him figure it out as we go, right? If he can't run, that's a major problem.
Well, here's what we know, right? If they don't trust him as a thrower, they will run him.
Yes. I also think it's a good lesson. And you'll see this at the scouting combine, but specifically with quarterbacks or just any potential high pick. In the non-big conferences, and this includes D1 AA, but even non-Power 5, it is much harder to evaluate the, how it's going to translate. Like when I watch Bryce Young, I have 2 games last year against Georgia, which had literally 11 players that start in the NFL on defense. 2 games in a month period, right? The SEC championship game and the national. It doesn't get any easier to evaluate. Like, can this guy play against the best players? Like that's
Yeah.
And you would say Trey is the opposite of like, who the fuck was he playing against?
I know.
And I don't blame. I'm just saying it's very, very difficult to evaluate because now we have a couple examples of physically talented guys, but they're playing against non-NFL players week in, week out.
You know what's weird about it is that, and I saw some debate about, like could Trey Lance, is he fast enough to get the edge in the NFL? To me, that's not what it's about. It's that he looks uncomfortable. And you've seen it. Like sometimes you see a player play against lesser competition. And even if, their physical traits, they're superior at one level, and that's not going to be the case at another level. I do think a lot of times, a guy's comfort in terms of just understanding what his body is capable of can translate. Now you learn real quick, like, oh, you could get that shot off at your Division IV high school. It doesn't work in your Division I college. You belong at a smaller school, right? Jimmer Fredette going to the NBA, it doesn't translate. But the part that's weird to me is just, Trey Lance and just there are even some basic things running the ball that just gave me a little bit of hope that experience would solve some of the problems with him as a runner that he was having early. And he just didn't get that.
I just think you never, hell, even Bryce Young's a good example. You never know till you know, right? You can have a lot of success in the minor leagues. Game 1, you're facing Justin Verlander in front of 50,000 people. I can win the U.S. Amateur.
Yeah, but you might.
Next year, I'm teeing off at the Masters.
You might get 500 at bats that year. I'm just saying, I don't think Trey's slower than I thought he was. I don't think he's less wiggly than I thought he was. It's not that.
I think he runs way less confident than he did in college. Than he does
well, 100% I agree. But it's not like, I guess there's a difference between he doesn't look as fast in the NFL as he did in college. We watched him. He didn't look that fast. It wasn't about that. I just think it's what you just said. He's uncomfortable, which makes me think maybe if given time, he could be kind of what you want him to be as a runner. No, he's not going to be Hurts. He's certainly not going to be Lamar, but it was never about being Lamar, right?
But time's not on his side.
No, it's not.